Hi, and good evening, and welcome to the study session of the City Council of the City of Moreno Valley Community Services District, City as successor agency for the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Moreno Valley Housing Authority. The City Council receives a separate stipend for CSD meetings. I now call this meeting to order on December 12th, 2017. It's a study session at 6:03 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by myself, and then we'll go ahead and do roll call. Okay, so please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Please be seated. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Gutierrez,
Oh, okay. Present, but usually it's the other way. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Baca,
Here.
Councilmember Cabrera.
Here.
Let the record reflect that Councilmember Marquez and Councilmember Guyba are absent today.
Okay, staff introductions, please.
Angel Miguel, Executive Assistant to Mayor and City Council.
Regina Flores, Deputy City Clerk. Tata Gesnares, City Clerk.
Marshall Ironman, Chief Financial Officer, City Treasurer.
Martin Kazanowicz, City Attorney.
Michelle Dawson, City Manager.
Tom DeSantis, Assistant City Manager.
Alan Brock, Community Development Director.
David Kurlowitz, Chief of Police, sitting in for Chief Ontiveros.
Great. All right, it is now time for public comments on matters on the agenda only. So again, if you'd like to comment on the two items that we have, your time to do that would be now. And the two items that we have, one is on food trucks. And then the other item is a homeless presentation, so about the homeless situation and options. So again, if you want to comment, your time is now, okay? So there's a 3-minute time limit per person. Please complete and submit a blue speaker slip to the city clerk. All remarks and questions shall be addressed to the presiding officer or to the city council. And I ask that speakers keep their comments respectful towards each other and that members of the audience remain courteous towards those at the podium. So, Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers? Oh, we don't have any speakers. Oh, okay. Well, I saw the two of them there. So okay. All right. So, okay. So we'll just go straight into our presentations. The first one that we have is A1, PowerPoint presentation on food trucks, community report of the Community Development Department.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council Member. We'll start this off with a presentation from Community Development, and it'll be given by Rick Sanzmeyer, our planning official, and we'll get the ball rolling on this.
Thank you, Alan. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. It's my pleasure to be here this evening. We were asked to revisit a item that was before you a couple of years ago. It was a presentation on food trucks. So I'm going to try and go over this very quickly. First off, with regard to food trucks, what is a food truck? Somebody might ask. A food truck has different designations. It's basically a walk-on vehicle where food is cooked, it's prepared, it's served in individual portions. But there are different types of food trucks also in terms of categories, and the exhibit up here before you this evening identifies some of those types of carts or vehicles you might see around the city that are classified as a mobile food facility. So we've got produce vehicles, which you might see someone pushing around. That's a wheeled cart. Also a wheeled cart might be carrying prepackaged food. It may be referred to as a push cart. The ice cream trucks that move around our city, and we've got a lot of those, are also prepackaged frozen foods, and they're also considered a food vehicle. Some stands, we don't have any of these that I'm aware of in the city that they serve sometimes non-packaged food or even packaged foods kind of prepared. There may be a popcorn cart or something like that. You might see those at amusement parks. And then the last one on the bottom there is a mobile food preparation unit, which is predominantly what I think the interest of the council is this evening. And those are generally called a food truck. Some of them sell prepackaged food, and some of them now actually can cook the food for you. So that's the variety of food trucks that are out there. Some of the things to to think about with regard to these mobile food facilities, that compliance checks are generally done by the county. So the city does work in concert with the county of Riverside. The environmental permits that are required for a food truck go through the county. Through the city here itself, our planning department, our code department, and the finance department are all involved. Predominantly the business licensing unit is checking a lot of the compliance standards now with our food trucks after they've gone through the county. But things that food trucks are checked for is the construction of the vehicle or the unit. They're checked for safe food handling. Sanitation, make sure that these are clean facilities, and that they're also cleared for any foodborne illnesses. These are all to protect the public health and safety of the community. People that are going to be, going to these food trucks or food facilities, they expect that these are safe places to do business. And then the last one that I have there is compliance with California Health and Safety Code. If somebody wants to establish a mobile food facility or get a food truck going here in the city is predominantly following the County of Riverside regulations. So first step, somebody has to decide, do you want to have a food service? Do you want to have a food truck? It's their decision, and they come in, they submit plans. These plans and the fees are stuff that's going to the county. The county is checking these facilities. After those plans are approved, if they need to construct the food facility, they would construct the food facility, then they would call in for an inspection. Again, that would be done through the county. If they were to build some sort of a facility here in the city, our building department could be involved, but predominantly when we talk about these things, we're not talking about those sorts of structures. The other thing is they have to obtain a commissary agreement. Now, there is a commissary in the city. There's one, it's off of Sunnymead Boulevard. The commissary is a place where the food truck is stored at night. We don't allow the food trucks to be taken to an individual person's home and kept there overnight because they have food products that have to be maintained. They may have to have refrigeration, they may have to be plugged in. So the commissary is a place where the trucks are kept overnight. Our business licensing folks will ensure that a commissary agreement is in place before we issue a business permit. Then the paperwork and the annual payments to the environmental health permit fees are all done again through the county. But we do ensure compliance, that those things have been taken care of before we issue a business permit. This is just a quick summary of the things I've probably just gone through, but I'll just touch on a couple other ones that I did meet with our business license staff earlier today to verify that we are checking valid driver's license for these things. We are looking at the vehicle registration. We want to make sure that everything's up to code and that the proper stickers and permits and everything are also on the vehicles. We are checking that the food manager or the food handler has the proper certificates. And so these are things that are double checked by the city. So what's happening in Moreno Valley with regard to food trucks or what we classify as catering services? One of the ways we are able to get a baseline of how many potential food units might be out there was we took a look at catering licenses, business licenses that are associated with somebody who's doing a catering business or a food catering business in particular. We have 56 business licenses in the city right now that are issued for some sort of catering. 27 of those represent ice cream trucks, so we know that there's a vehicle associated with those. There are 24 listed as catering business, but we do not have any specifics with regard to if they have a actual vehicle or not operating with them. We believe that they probably don't, but they could have a small unit or something that might be operating with them. Then the last category is the 5 food trucks that we do have. The 5 food trucks are allowed to roam in the city. We generally direct them to go to our industrial zones. The reason that is the industrial buildings are large. We've got staff in there, workers that don't have a lot of time to maybe get out and eat the lunch, and sometimes the food truck provides a convenient service to them. They do have to make arrangements with the individual properties down there to bring their food truck onto the property. We want them to be located safely off of arterials or roads that are carrying traffic. There is some requirements that the streets that they can stop on have to be the low-speed streets, so we definitely don't want them on the higher-speed streets. So we generally are directing them to work with the individual properties, get permission to go on site. Then they generally try and make arrangements around their lunch hour so that the employees have a convenient option available. None of the 5 food trucks that are operating in the city today are actually based in Moreno Valley. Their business license does not show that they actually have a Moreno Valley address. We thought that would be important to point out. With regard to the catering business that we have licenses for in the city, 33 of them do have a business location based here in the city, and 30 of them operate as home-based businesses. One of the requirements for a home-based business is the parking requirements. And again, a food truck has to be parked at a commissary, so a home-based business for an actual large food truck may not be convenient for somebody to operate. But they can operate the catering business where they're going out and providing food services. They may have a small cart that maybe they haven't got a license for or a permit for. We would encourage them to come in and get a permit if they haven't already. I have noticed some around the city on occasion when I drive through, but in talking with our business services folks, none of those are technically permitted that we're aware of. The food trucks do, by the county standards, do require a route map. It's supposed to identify their stop locations. And then when they stop, we also want to know what the stop times are. So if a food truck is stopping at a business location, they can only stop there for less than 1 hour. If they stop for any longer than an hour, if they plan to stop there for more than an hour, then they also have to have an agreement in place with that business, a restroom agreement, because that's just a requirement from the county. The food trucks must have a city business license, and then they must comply with our mobile vending provisions within section 12.02 of our municipal code. We did look at what's going on in some of our surrounding cities. The city of Riverside, Corona, Redlands, and San Bernardino are sample cities that we checked. They do allow food truck services, and those are predominantly issued as part of a special use permit or a special event permit. The city of Jurupa Valley, we recently saw, has adopted an ordinance that does allow for the roaming within their city, roaming of food trucks. So we're already similar to that. So if somebody wants to come into our city, they're already allowed to roam around and provide that service. The operation in Jurupa Valley associated with their roaming provisions is that they have to operate only between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. They have to stay outside of 50 feet of any intersection, and they're not allowed within 300 feet of a school. So those are some of the requirements. We don't have those sorts of restrictions here in our city, but that's just a sample that we did recently look at. With that, that's a quick overview of food trucks in the city. I'm happy to answer any questions. With me this evening is Brooke McKinney from our finance department and his staff, Jeremy, and I have Mark Gross, our senior planner, who did most of the research and preparation of this PowerPoint presentation. And I want to thank them for their help in preparing, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thanks, Rick. Just really quick, in regards to, I believe it was a couple years ago when we talked about this item, we made some kind of amendment to the municipal code, and if I recall, I mean, it basically had to do with Kona Ice, to allow Kona Ice to kind of operate as a, we didn't actually name it for Kona Ice, but it was basically for Kona Ice, something like that. Can you go over that a little bit? What was that about?
I apologize. I'm not remembering.
Or maybe Michelle or Tom?
I recall it had something to do with operating the food trucks in the parks, and I think the amendment had to do with accessibility for them in the parks. I don't remember the specifics, though.
Okay.
I apologize.
Because I was under the impression that we couldn't have food trucks throughout the city at that time, or even now. But now what you're saying is that we can have food trucks?
We can have food trucks throughout the city based on the regulations I've shown you. The provision for something like a Kona Ice going on to the city facility, I can look into it. I don't have an answer for you this evening. I understand that there were some changes since the last time we made a presentation where the county was regulating food trucks, and they were limiting to prepared, prepackaged foods, and now they've removed some of the restrictions, and they're allowing actually prepared food out of some of the trucks. So that
Maybe
may
that's
be
what
one of
it
the
was.
changes.
Maybe that's what it was, that, if I recall, maybe 2 years ago, they couldn't actually have real food or something like that. Maybe that's what it was.
And that may be it, because a Kona ice truck, the way I'm aware of them, they're actually preparing that ice and that snow cone and everything right there, where a prepackaged ice cream truck would already have the snow cone made and prepackaged, and they can sell it differently. So that may be what was going on with the Kona ice facility. I may look to Brooke McKinney to help me with that one.
Okay. That sounds right. Okay, do you,
As Rick said, part of the issue was that they were on parkland, which has a little bit of different business license requirement than on city street, because it was on a city park, and so they regulate their stuff. And it also was because it was the prepackaged versus being handmade there. And so because the snow cones did not specifically fit the prepackaged definition, that was what I believe the modification was, to allow them to do the preparation on site.
and I think it was just that one company, right?
I think that one company is the only one that does that currently, but I don't think we wrote it so it was only Kona Ice. It was to accommodate that process, and anybody.
So can, let's say, for example, a company that sells, let's say, Colombian food or Argentinian food, can they park at a park and start selling if they have a license from the city?
If they got,
business license?
I believe as long as they got approval from the Parks and Community Services or the Parks District, they could do that, again, as long as it met the county's requirements.
Okay, because I know they have to just have the health inspection to get the food truck. So what are the requirements from the city for the parks? I know they're specific. I remember, because I remember that was the reason why, I mean, if we can go back in the tape, I think that was the reason why we kind of I don't know if, I think that was the reason why we crafted that.
There's no commercial vending allowed in the park, so I think probably that was the issue. But I'd have to go
That's what it
back and
was.
we'll look up the old staff report and get that information
Okay, so
to
that's
you.
what it was. I think that's
I
what
think
it
it was
was.
commercial vending in the parks.
In your, Honorable Mayor and council members, your section 1202.015 of the Municipal Code B, no mobile vendor shall vend within 1,000 feet of any private or public school ground during the period of time commencing 1 hour before the start of a regular school day, ending 1 hour after the end of school day. So there might have been some restrictions with regard to the playground.
I think that's what it was, because I do recall there were some people that wanted to do food trucks, and then they couldn't do the food trucks in Moreno Valley, and I think that's probably what it was.
We'll look up the old staff report and get that information
So
to
it's
you.
probably because they couldn't go by the park or park by the park, and and all of that. But I'll allow other questions from the other council members, and then we'll provide some direction. Questions? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Baca.
Rick, if you can please go back to page 4.
Is this the right one?
Yes. And on step 5, what does this mean? Obtain a commissary agreement from an approved commissary. Can you be more specific?
Yes, a food truck, like I said, cannot park at their home. They have to be parking at what's called the commissary facility. So what we're asking them to do is give us a copy of the agreement that you have that says that you have the right to use a commissary, and that you will basically hook up in the evening, and you won't be storing the food truck in an inappropriate location.
And did you say that we have one?
We actually have one. I believe it's off of Sunnymead Boulevard. I do not have the exact address, but I know that Jeremy knows the answer to that. Valley
I know
Ice-
exactly where it is, right by Sunny Meat Burger. Okay. All
Thank you,
right.
Jeremy.
So that's the commissary is an actual storage facility where you leave your truck overnight. Nothing else?
That's what I understand the commissary to be, yes.
Okay, all right. And then I had a question on, if you can go 2 pages. That one. Okay. What are these food trucks? Under the first bullet point, where it says 5 food trucks. Can you describe that?
Sure. We have one that is listed in our business license as a large spreadsheet here, sorry. It's a Kershid ice cream store. It's based in Palmdale, California, and it's listed as a catering truck. We have another one listed as Rad Ice Cream. I know these are coming across as an ice cream truck, but they're listed separately in our business license is issued, calling them a food vendor out of a food truck, and they are located out of Riverside, California. We have Raquel's Catering and Walter Foden. That's the name of their business. They operate out of Mira Loma. And we have Tropical Vibes is the food truck. Those are the 5 that are listed, not as an ice cream truck, so maybe they're providing additional, I don't know their menu, but they may be providing stuff in addition to the ice cream, and maybe that's why we have listed in that way.
And what does it mean where they're allowed to roam?
So if you're providing a catering service, and say you're using the In-N-Out Burger truck, you may be doing an event at your place of business, and you've arranged for the In-N-Out Burger truck to come park at your facility for the special event. They're not roaming. They're coming to a specific site to do catering or to service a particular event. What we talked about earlier, say Kona Ice was arranged to come to a park. Maybe there was some sort of a fair or something going on. They've come for that specific reason. A roaming truck comes into the city and has a route, and so maybe during the course of the day they're going to stop at the Procter & Gamble facility, then they're going to stop at the Amazon facility, and then they may come back around and maybe stop over by Riverside University Health Systems. That's not a real route, but it could be a route that they would describe for us. They would come in with that route map. They would have gone to the county also and said, this is our route and our intended times for stops at these 3 locations. They would now be roaming through the city and making multiple stops. They're not just coming in for the single purpose of on the day. That's how I would try and characterize that for you.
Okay, and under the first bullet, still, 27 ice cream trucks, but it's under the bullet that says issued for catering. So are these ice cream trucks going around with their little bell selling ice creams to kids, or are they for catering?
Those, I would have to defer to our business license folks. My understanding of the ice cream trucks is they actually do roam. They roam neighborhoods, but they are listed in the business license under the category of catering, and that's why I put it up there as a catering service.
Okay, and then the next bullet, food trucks allowed to roam and generally directed to industrial zones. So do they come and park there and sell food that's cooked inside the truck?
If they have a truck that actually prepares the food and they've got all the appropriate permits, then they could sell the prepared food. If they are a truck that carries prepackaged foods, then they would sell the prepackaged foods. I don't know enough specifics about the 5 food trucks that we have, and I don't have any details to tell you where they're actually stopping today. I apologize for that. So I can't tell you if they're selling prepared food or if they're selling prepackaged foods.
Okay. All right, thank you, Rick.
as of now, looking at those numbers here, and that's what we have here in Moreno Valley. And the last time I checked, in terms of the county level, what are the requirements for operating a mobile food facility? I recall it had to be prepackaged food. For example, say an ice cream truck that already has packaged ice cream. So my question here is, do you know if now, as of today, say a Mexican restaurant that actually cooks food on a grill, is that now allowed at the county level?
I'm going to see if Brooke McKinney can actually help me with this one.
Councilmember, that was Riverside County's position a few years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. They have since changed it, and so now preparation on site is allowed. And so we are seeing, even though we, as Councilmember Baca's question, that the 5 trucks that we have are generally not preparing food on the site. They're buying it prepackaged, or even maybe something from a fast food restaurant, McDonald's, Taco Bell, and then they're reselling it. So the 5 trucks we have are not preparing on location. They're bringing it in, but Riverside County's changed their ordinance now to allow that.
Thank you. And my next question is, since we have, it looks like the majority of the permits that we've issued here in Moreno Valley are mostly ice cream trucks. The 5 food trucks that we have now, or any potential food trucks that we're bringing, do we not have food trucks cooking food on the food truck because no one has submitted an application to get a permit, or are we just not issuing those permits?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Again, the only reason we did not allow it in the past is because Riverside County would not certify it, and would not allow because of the health violation or the health code issues. If someone were to apply today, there are no prohibitions that we know of that would keep us from allowing somebody to do that. We just have not had businesses come in with that interest at this point.
Okay, thank you. And as far as you showed the 5 different types of mobile food facilities, there's different carts, and if you can go back to that. You mentioned that some that have permits here in Moreno Valley actually go outside of industrial locations, for example, a warehouse, and they sell food. Do we also allow, say, smaller carts or tow trailers, for example, to do that also, or is it strictly for the bigger food trucks?
So it's my understanding that we would allow any of these types of food facility, mobile food facility units. Excuse me, tongue twister. We predominantly only get the large ones. I have seen some of the smaller units moving around the city, but it's my understanding that they have not come in and actually got a permit for that. I don't know why the reason for that is. If the smaller units, if somebody came in, we would follow the same regulations because it would follow the county requirements. They'd have to have their facility checked and licensed and certified, and they'd have to have the right vehicle registration. As far as the market goes for prepackaged food versus prepared food, that could be one of the other things that's going on that is determining whether we have those sorts of food trucks in the city or not. If it's an awareness issue, we'll be happy to, if there's somebody who has an interest, they can call us, and we'll definitely let them know that the county has changed their regulations, so long as they follow the county regulations. As Brooke indicated, we're not aware of any restrictions that would keep us from approving those, so we would work with them on that.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, that addresses my questions because, for example, I brought up the industrial parks. At these warehouses, you also mentioned their employees and their staff. They work very long shifts, and at lunchtime, there are very few locations where they can go in the limited amount of time that they have for lunch to eat. So I would like to see, I guess we have to do more outreach. Also on my part, I will be participating in that, reaching out to the restaurants here, local mom and pop shops, and see if they are willing or able to, open a mobile food facility and potentially go out there to industrial parks, office buildings, et cetera, so long as they comply with the requirements at the county level and the city level. So maybe that's something that we can work on. I know I'll also assist in that endeavor, reaching out to our local restaurants and businesses. And can I also make a request at this time? I would like to see at least one food truck festival here in Moreno Valley next year. If we can work on that, I believe, I would wait for your advice and recommendations, but if we can, spread the word out and work together to pick a date and a time and a location, possibly the mall is something that was running through my head because it is right off of the freeway. And there's a lot of potential for people driving through Moreno Valley to see that. There's also a lot of parking, and I feel that the mall would be willing to partner with us in that kind of event. So if we can look into that and schedule that for sometime next year here in Moreno Valley, if we can have a food truck festival, I think that would be a really good thing here for the city.
Okay. Well, looking for consensus from the three of you, and we will bring that, we'll look into that and look at some of the other surrounding communities when they have theirs, make sure we're not overlapping. We'll bring that information back. Thank you.
One thing I like to, and maybe even a park too, I know we've had some parks that have a lot of land, and well, obviously they all have land, but, parking areas and, even by the college where we did the El Grito event, if the mall doesn't, want to do it there. But I do think it's important to have like some kind of, city-sponsored food festival event, just to kind of put us on the map. But I kind of want to go back a little bit to some of these slides because you mentioned that commercial vending is not allowed at parks or at public places. Is that correct? Or
The commercial vending at a park, I would defer to.
We're all looking at each other, so we don't have that information. I'm sorry, we don't have that tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, if that's the case, I'd like for us to do an amendment to that ordinance, to bring back, where we can allow food trucks to go to parks and public places, like City Hall. So we can have like a little food truck to come right here or right in front of the school district, because I believe that was the issue. My understanding was that they couldn't go to the parks, and that's usually like in LA, a lot of food trucks will go to the parks when there's events and they'll park there, but they couldn't come.
If I may, Mayor, just so we have clear direction when we bring the item back, is the council interested in having the food trucks be allowed to participate in specific events, or simply be able to, at any time, drive to a park and park at a city park and try, basically conduct business
I would
on
prefer
park property?
Yeah, well, okay, well, go ahead.
Before the mayor answers, I have a question regarding the food trucks. Are we now licensing, for example, those, the only one I see down there that's actually a walk-on vehicle is the one on the bottom, the mobile food preparation unit? Are we allowing those to come into the city, for example, and park across the street or park by Amazon or park, somewhere else and sell, make food on the truck and sell it, like a burrito, a sandwich, or?
I think what I heard staff say is that they're under the county regulations, they are permitted, but nobody has applied yet for a license in the city to do that.
But we do have a license here in the city.
Any business that does business in the city needs to come in and apply for a business license, and I think that is what's being talked about.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
Okay, but going back to what I was asking, so I guess what I want to just make sure is that, because see, what it is that we're allowing it through the county allows it, but if they can't park, in public places or at parks, then I don't think they're going to want to come to Moreno Valley. And so I think if that's the case, I'd like it to see amended to reflect that they can actually go to the parks, not just for specific events, but just park there and then sell, and we could still get some revenue. Some sales tax, just like LA. But I also wanted to add, because there were also some other little rules that we have in the municipal code that say that they have to have predetermined routes. Who would approve those routes? Would it be the city or would it be the county?
That's a county regulation today, that we're relying on the county to take in, but it is something that I talked to our business licensing folks that we could check, but right now we're relying on the county to check those requirements.
So someone, let's say, there was an event and you could call a food truck, and I mean, they could come through the city. Well, actually, they have to get approval from the county, right? For the route.
For the route, they're expected to provide a route and a route schedule, I believe is what it's called for in their regulations. I am looking at Chapter 5 of our outdoor merchandising and vending regulations. There is a requirement for, if somebody has a mobile service like this and they want to provide that service on a private property, they do have to get the permission from the private property owner to allow them to come onto their site. So I would expect that same thing would extend if we were going to allow them to come onto public property, that the city would want to be aware that they're coming on there. So that's the only things I can see real quickly as I read through this.
And the other thing, Rick, going back to, I think, well, let me ask you this. Could a business, let's say we have an event, or let's say we're going to throw like the holiday tree lighting. Well, maybe not that event, but let's say we're going to do a special event, a 2-day event. Could a business, a food truck business from another city, participate and come to our city?
Yes.
Yeah, there's no prohibition to keep businesses based in other cities out of Moreno Valley.
Okay.
So as long as they came and followed the guidelines that we have set forth, anybody could participate in that.
But the only reason I asked is because I thought there was one part in the slide that said that they have to have a Moreno Valley business license.
They would have to have a business license, but they would not have to be Moreno Valley based.
Okay.
So remember, the business license does not just apply to Moreno Valley based businesses. It's any business doing business within Moreno Valley.
Okay, so they don't have to have a Moreno Valley business license, just a business
No.
license.
They would have to have a Moreno Valley business license even if they were based in Riverside. So if they're in Moreno Valley doing business, they would need to have a Moreno Valley business license to do that.
No, but what I'm asking, let's say they're not in Moreno Valley.
If they're not based in Moreno Valley,
They're not based in Moreno Valley.
they would still need a Moreno Valley business license. A business license is not just issued to businesses located in Moreno Valley. It's businesses that are doing business in Moreno Valley. So in that case, a food truck is located in Riverside, like some of the ones Rick mentioned are in Mira Loma. They're housed in Mira Loma, but they're coming into Moreno Valley to provide that service to our citizens. So they still have a Moreno Valley business license because they are doing business in Moreno Valley, even though they are based outside the city.
Okay, and would that still be the case if it was just like a special event for a 1-day event?
Yes.
They would have to get a Moreno Valley business license?
Yes.
Is that the case with other cities? Like LA?
As far as I know, it is.
I would say that's very common.
It's very
To
common.
require
Sometimes
businesses.
it's the whole event gets one large business license.
Or like a
that's
special
more-
use permit?
Well, those also, but sometimes the organizer pays for the business licenses for all the vendors that are attending.
Okay, got it. And maybe like a little permit, like a temporary or something like that? Would it be called a temporary or special?
I think what you're describing could be a temporary use or a special event permit.
Okay. And also, and this may be more of a legal question, but let's say we were to allow commercial vending, cook to order food at parks or public areas. Could we also have it where the food trucks are allowed to roam throughout the city except business plazas related to the industry. So like, for example, if you own a coffee shop, or if, you know, you can't have a food truck that's a coffee shop right in front of, you know, in the same plaza. Or, you know, maybe 100 feet away, or, you know, it has to be outside the plaza.
There are a couple of issues that are attached to those type of regulations. One of them is that it would be up to the plaza owner to regulate whether or not a private business can come onto the plaza and compete with a business that he already has a lease with. So if there's lease provisions that would prohibit that, then that would be a violation of the lease. If there aren't any, then in theory, a property owner could allow a coffee truck to set up right in front of a coffee shop that's in his plaza. So that's a relationship that's between the business, the tenant and the landlord, more than between the city and from the legal standpoint on having food trucks on city property, which I think was the beginning of your question, there are some issues that would need to be discussed and gone over, and there will be obviously a contact with minors and on our property, which could provide for some necessity for background checks and those type of things, just like we do with any of our employees or volunteers that come in contact with children in doing their services, because the city would permit a truck, a vendor, to come on the property, on the city property, and conduct business there. City would be exposed in an unfortunate event if something was to occur.
So is it possible to have that, or is it not possible, legally speaking, as far as, and this is to protect the business owners?
Well, the protections that I would be concerned about is protecting the city and obviously any victims if you know, that wouldn't happen. But is it legally possible? You can structure a mechanism by which you know, we could make it as safe as possible.
Okay, and then okay, so just to kind of recap here, or see if we have a, well, you have another question? Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and just kind of recap, just to make sure that we have one direction that we'd like to go. Okay.
Thank you. The mayor brought up taxes, sales taxes, and finances. Do we have any information as far as what we get from the permitted mobile food facilities here in the city?
I would have to go look at our sales tax database to see. Part of the problem we've experienced with the kind of the walk-in food trucks, or the prepare on site, is when they're housed when their main base is outside the city. That's where the sales tax ends up going, because it's hard for them to segregate the sales of hamburgers on Tuesday versus Wednesday. Or that's the discussion we've kind of had problems with the food trucks we've talked to. The getting the sales tax allocated back to the city of Moreno Valley has been very difficult for them, and we don't have a good way to go back and monitor that to make sure that they did, because it's so far after the fact.
Yeah, I can understand. Well, this is just an idea, because they have to submit their routes to the county level, so the county knows where they are and at what time. So if they have to have receipts and keep track of all the money that they're making, then essentially we could know what they sold and how much they made when they were in Moreno Valley, for example. But I can see also what you're saying, where it would be difficult to get that information from them and have them comply, I guess, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, the 5 that we've got, I'll go look at the information and see what we've got that I can provide you. The scenario where you mentioned of having a festival, a food truck festival, and them coming in for a day, that's the scenario that I'm talking about. It's very hard to get them to take that one day and allocate it to the city. That's where we've had the discussions have kind of broken down when we get to that point, because they're only in for one day. The places that they normally do business is you know, San Bernardino or someplace else. And so it's, we've had a lot of discussions about that with the other food trucks.
So what I'm hearing is that it is possible. We just need to keep working on that. So when the time comes for the food truck festival, that's something that we'll have to address to make sure that everyone gets their share. My last question is, I want to use an example. Say we have a taco shop, and the taco shop is located in a shopping center. Do we allow that taco shop to set up a grill or a cart out in front of their store inside of the shopping center? Is that currently allowed?
Yes, under the temporary use permit provisions in our code, a business can come in and secure a temporary use permit if they are selling the product that they normally sell on the premises. They're allowed at different times during the year, if they want, to set up a shop basically in the parking lot. It's like a parking lot sale. But they would have to come in and get a temporary use permit for that. We'd want to know what the duration of the event's going to be. There are some limitations in our code to how many days per year they can do that. And then we also want to have an understanding of what portions of the parking lot or the pedestrian ways that they're going to be using, so that we can make sure that they're properly controlled, so to speak. If they're going to bring any temporary lighting, or if they're going to bring any sort of equipment or accessory structures, they may require a building permit to set up stuff. Depends on how elaborate they're becoming, but we do have those provisions.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Would you by any chance know off the top of your head, you mentioned a limit on how many days they can do that per year. Do you know how many days per year they can do that?
There's one provision in our code for 18 days, and there's another one for 30 days, and I'd have to look at it. It has to do with merchandise sale on the site. I can look it up real quickly. It's easy to look up in the municipal code if you want to give me a second. Well,
Okay,
if you have any other questions.
Yeah, because if it's, I think if it's too limited or the number is too low, maybe we can increase that. I don't know if there are any potential negative repercussions that can come from increasing the number of days that they can do that a year. If there are, I would like to hear that as well.
My apologies. I don't have internet connection on my phone right now. For some reason, it's saying no server connected. So
Okay. Yeah.
I'd have to find another terminal to
And
look at.
this is going to come back to the council at a future date, correct? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's all the questions that I have for now. Thank you.
And I'm assuming that the plaza owner would have to approve that they're able to sell those products for the temporary use permit.
We do ask for the underlying property owner to sign off on the permit, yes.
For the plaza owner too. Okay. And so you're not aware of any other details, Rick, or issues with the ordinances that would allow a business, well, obviously if they have a predetermined route, cooked to order, they can come into the city?
Do I have any concerns with that?
Well, no. Are there any hiccups or any or any issues, that all of a sudden, might come along, later down the road?
But
as far as, that there's something in the ordinance that says we can't do that. We can't have food trucks that are cooked to order, as long as they have a predetermined route and they're approved by the county of Riverside.
From what I understand today, the potential obstacles for bringing in any sort of a food truck, whether they're doing prepackaged food or prepared on site, if they're going to come into a private property, the first thing we need to do, the thing I read in the code, is they're going to need the private property owner's authorization. If they have that and they follow all the county regulations to get the appropriate certifications, they've got the background check on the driver, they've got the vehicle registered appropriately, they've got the health inspection done, they've got the other inspections done for the equipment, and they've secured a business license in the city and they've paid their fees. It's my understanding that that those are all the obstacles that they have to overcome, and we are working with them to issue those permits if there's an interest, and we do that in a timely fashion. So I don't see any other obstacles.
Okay. And then if we were to do let me see here, a food festival, all we would need is just a special permit to invite those food trucks. we could.
We'd have to identify a site.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have to get the permission from that site. If we're going to do it on public property, then we have to just go through that particular process. Set it up, and get all the appropriate sign off on each of the trucks that are going to visit there.
If I'm going to jump in here real quick,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me. If it were on private property, we would look to that property owner to make that application for that special event permit. And then they would identify all the vendors that they wanted to show up and participate in that. Or you could help sponsor that event, and maybe public property would be more appropriate for that, whether it's a park or somewhere else. And like Brooke had mentioned earlier, there would be also the business license element involved with that, whether it's one all-encompassing business license or individual.
And I'd like for us, Councilmember Cabrera touched on a piece of the sales tax. I think there is a way, to figure it out. I mean, really, it's almost kind of like the business owners have to be honest with themselves and kind of report it. I know as a former business owner, a Berry Bean, obviously every day you have the receipts, so you're supposed to report it. So if they just report it, then have we done any? And I know Councilmember Carrera kind of asked something like similar to that, but like any research on like any economic impact, like in the region, like in LA, or those areas of having food trucks?
Mayor, can I interject for one moment? When we're looking at the sales tax, you mentioned it's really the honesty of the business to come forward and report those items. So we look for that to make sure that they're reporting the sales tax. If we went an alternative path, we're going to have to bring in auditors to pull their books apart, look at that from a different perspective to really see what's going on. Now, given the amount of sales on some of these, it's a strategy that we may not have taken in some of these areas to really audit everything they do to pull in a small dollar amount and being business friendly on some aspects as well. So it really comes into the scale of these things. I think the best thing is if we had a catering truck located here or stationed here, then that allows us to capture the most out of what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think also too, part of it was that about a year ago, I think that's when Riverside County lifted those requirements that, it can only be prepackaged. So I think that's the other issue. That's probably why we don't have a lot of food trucks kind of roaming around. But so what I'm kind of hearing though is we would like to allow them, if we could have like whether it's an ordinance or a resolution, maybe it might need an ordinance, to allow them, in parks, public places. Obviously, we may have to look at the legal stuff, as far as background checks. Increasing the number of days for temporary use permits, maybe, because maybe, we don't have the number of days. Oh, you found it.
I have the answer.
You've been doing your research. Okay.
Thanks for the computer. Merchandise sales, outdoor or in mobile or temporary enclosures in conjunction with the established business on site is allowed in all of our commercial districts, and it's limited to 18 days per shopping or commercial center, and that's per calendar year. So those 18 days can be consecutive, or you can break them up. You could do, a weekend, 2-day weekends for 9 weekends, or you can do all 18 days in a row, or you could do a full week and then wait a couple months and do another week. So it's up to them, but it's limited to 18 days per calendar year.
And that's how long they can operate with that temporary use permit. The 18 days.
18 days total
For the whole year.
For the whole year.
Oh,
Now that's associated with that one business. So if you have the taco business or has the taco shop on the site, and he can do it for 18 days per year, and there could be a hamburger, outlet, a few doors down, and he may want to do a special event or a temporary use permit for that. Sometimes they want to do it together, but it would be 18 calendar days per year for each of those permits. Now, the nuance becomes per shopping center or commercial center. So I'd have to get one interpretation is last thing I just said. I want to maybe retract a little bit because I read that again. I'm not sure that they can actually do cumulative in excess of the 18 days.
I mean, I think that, I think we should probably have a little more. What do you guys think? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Baca?
Rick, my question is, if someone wants to open up a food truck, is their first stop here at the city? Do we already have a packet for them to, with instructions on how to obtain the business license and permits?
Their first stop could be coming here to the city to get the business license requirements, but the business license requirements are going to rely on them getting the approvals to the county. So they're going to ultimately have to go to the county and get the sign-offs on the county. So it wouldn't be a one-stop shop here per se. They would have to come in. I can ask.
They would actually have to go to get their seller's permit first.
So we don't have anything that they need to sign off in order for them to come to the city and get a license?
We have a packet that we give all interested business owners that come in and start something, and it would have all the requirements listed in that packet. So they've got to go get a reseller's permit. They would have to go to the county and get those things and then bring us proof back that they have that. So we could be the first stop, but they would have to go to those other places to complete the checklist that they need.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So what I'm kind of hearing here, some consensus here is just to allow in parks, public places, to bring back something. And then we'll talk about timeline. And then increase the number of days for the temporary use permit annually to bring back something with that to maybe possibly 36 days, so doubling the 18. And then a food festival, so we can bring back a food festival to Moreno Valley. And then if we could, if possible, legally speaking, and I know you have to do some research on that, Martin, but maybe if we can put something in there, just that they can't be in the plaza or to stay away from the plaza.
Unless it's
unless the owner allows it. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
For example, let's say let's use Zapata's restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's say they have their own food truck and they close every night at 9 p.m. Can they operate afterwards from the food truck?
yes, because that's their restaurant. I mean, that's their business. But for example, let's say I own a Mexican restaurant and it's called Jose's. I can't go into Zapata's Plaza or that plaza where there's a Mexican restaurant already there, unless the plaza owner says, "Oh, okay, it's okay. I want them to compete."
Okay.
We'll work it out. We'll look at different scenarios. Okay, but basically, we just want to protect the small business owner. We don't want Jose's Mexican food truck to park right next to Zapata's, inside Zapata's, where Zapata's Plaza is. Okay. So, Rick, when do you think you can bring back something? An ordinance?
The ordinance I would be working on would be the temporary use permit, which is part of Title IX. The amendment to the ordinance that restricts the commercial vending at public facilities, I'd have to do a little bit more research on. So that the ordinance on increasing the number of days for a temporary use permit.
I'll jump
It's
in here
pretty-
real quick.
pretty quick, I think.
How about we could bring something back for council? Does this have to go to planning commission first? Something like this in Title IX? Or
It's any amendment to the land use regulations has to go through the planning commission first. So this would be changing.
I would ask the council if we could perhaps work on something for you after we get through the cannabis ordinance for the land use portion.
Well, the only thing is, I want us to make sure that we get on the food festival. So, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I want us to keep going on that food festival.
I don't think that the land use, any changes to land use ordinances would impact our ability as a city to sponsor a food truck festival. So I think that we can get that going.
Okay.
I think the
outside of that.
parameters in the code today would accomplish that.
Would accomplish
food
that. You're just
festival.
talking about the parks and the public places. That's the part that you want later.
Can I ask, on a food truck festival, are you looking at this being multiple days that would exceed 18 days?
Oh.
Okay, so then I don't see any.
Councilmember Cabrera?
Yeah, my idea for the festival is just one day, one time, 2018. We'll see how that goes, and for the years after that, based on how it went, we'll decide if we're going to do more or not do them at all.
Okay, so and what I'm kind of hearing from the city manager and Alan is that you'd like some time for the new ordinance about allowing the food trucks in parks and public places.
Yes, please, because the same team that's working on cannabis fast and furiously would be the same team that needs to get that done. But with regard to the food truck festival, we can try to find someone to get working on that much sooner.
Okay, and then the temporary use permit, increasing the number of days to that. Is that the same?
That also is a code amendment that is in Title IX, and it would have to go through the Planning Commission.
Okay, but is that one that you're also requesting time on?
Yes.
Yes.
I would anticipate doing those concurrently.
Okay, and then the one about staying away from the plazas, the research on that as well?
That would be all part of that Title IX amendment.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we have it all down.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the clarifications.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you, Rick. And so just to summarize, we'll get a recap after March or April when it's the the cannabis, but we're going to be working on the food truck festival. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so the next item that we have is actually the homeless presentation. And this is a report from Financial and Management Services. Marshall.
Yes. Good afternoon, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council Member. If you hold on 1 second, let me just grab that clicker. Thank you. Last year, we brought to the City Council a study session item on the homeless to give some of the factors as to the homeless counts, the funding, some of the services in the city. This year, we wanted to bring back an update and then talk about some of the new programs that are in place based on City Council direction. So when we're looking at homeless, there are many definitions of homeless depending on which federal funding source you're looking at, which jurisdiction. These can be defined as literally homeless, imminent risk of homeless, homeless under the other federal statutes. Different school districts have definitions of homeless rather than actual homeless, and then fleeing and attempting to flee domestic violence. Annually, the county coordinates a homeless point-in-time count, typically in January of every year. When they conduct that count, what we're looking at in those areas are individuals that are sheltered or unsheltered, and again, places not meant for human habitation, or if they're in kind of emergency shelters or already going through traditional housing. One of the key areas we're most concerned with is that category of unsheltered, because those are the individuals that are not receiving any services and really living in very poor conditions. When they do that point in time count, there are a couple areas that they're really not looking at. And again, these are kind of the medical facilities, if they're in drug rehab, any of those conditions, because those individuals, although they might be homeless, they are in a situation where they are receiving services and they're moving down that path to the next step to get away from homelessness. So last January, the count of the point in time, or the count of homeless during the point in time, indicated that Moreno Valley had 73 homeless individuals. The way that they conduct this search, 53 of those were actually interviewed and 19 of them were observed. So as individuals went through the city, they would look, and if they determined somebody from a distance might be homeless, they included that in that 19. But what you'll see here, to kind of relate it to how we are compared to other cities, is when you look at Hemet and Riverside and Banning and Temecula and Paris, some of the local jurisdictions, we end up with really the lowest homeless count relative to our population. So we have 73 homeless, but we have a population of 206,000. So we're a much larger area with that number of homeless. Versus when you're looking at Riverside that have 389, they're running about one homeless person per 1,000 people. And we're about a third of that. So that's a good indicator that we're addressing a lot of the homeless situation and doing the best we can to keep that number at a minimum. Now, the way that we're addressing a lot of this is there are many services. One thing to keep in mind with homelessness is it's a, if not a regional issue, it's a state and national issue. And so when we look at services for homeless, we want to make sure that, you know, it's not just in Moreno Valley, but the services have to be regional and state and at all levels as well. So this just gives you a little sample of some of the emergency shelters, transitional housing, and permanent housing that's out there. One thing to note is even like with U.S. Vets, this count has 25 beds. They're in the process right now of expanding those, which will bring a couple hundred more beds to meet the needs within the community. When we go beyond the housing, some of the other samples of resources that are available is there are transportation. Typically when you're homeless, you have an absence of a vehicle or means to get to doctor's appointments, other county services. So there are transportation. Also with inclement weather, we do have cooling and warming centers available for individuals. And then some of the other essentials such as showers that can be provided. What the city has done though is during the last year we did create the Pocket Local Resource Guide. We've distributed many of those already this year. We have those available for the public, for individuals that either are homeless or assisting with the homeless so that they can provide information. This pocket guide makes sure that they're aware of all of these items, whether it's shelters, assistance, food, clothing, where those items are. We try to update this on an annual basis, but this gives them one means. Within that guide, just to highlight, we identify where these items are on the map as well. So if you're a homeless individual and you have this, you can hopefully find the resources that you need. Many times it's just getting to that first point on the map, and then they lead you into the next direction on what you may need. Working with our other nonprofits in the community, we do have our nonprofit roundtable. From that, there was a citywide coalition that was formed, kind of a joint venture between multiple nonprofits. They've created this Moreno Valley Resource Directory through the citywide coalition. Again, just like the pocket guide, we do have this available on our city's website as well. And aside from the normal city website, we've also created over the last year this MIMO Val website. Now that website was structured to really be a hub to connect those in need, not just homeless individuals, but anybody at any income range or any capacity in their life that might need something. They could look for resources, and the nonprofits could post up there as well if they were holding events. They could post if they needed volunteers. One of the links through this is through the Just Serve website that allows to connect those volunteers with activities. So we've used this really as a hub to, you know, as it says, engage, unite, and really focus on those volunteers and services. One thing that we've been working on council direction is adopt a neighborhood. I know this is hard to read, it's just for focus, but what we wanted to let you know is through the MIMO Val website, we do have the Adopt a Neighborhood map up there. I do have handouts as well to provide you. This is just released. This is nice. It's an interactive map where there's points on the map that will allow you to focus into the contact information and what's available there. It also highlights about, I believe it's 39 areas within the city's jurisdiction that people can choose to adopt. And if individuals wanted to adopt a smaller area, we can work on different boundaries. The key point is if you're in a neighborhood and you just don't know who to contact and you don't want to contact the city or the county, that other individuals can adopt those. So similar to the schools where we have the Adopt a School programs, if a teacher needed resources, they have a business that adopted that school and they can reach out to that business. We hope to get more individuals involved on this. We do have a meeting with Victory Outreach on Friday, so they should be our first community sponsor at that level. But we have added a lot of resources here. Addition, one of the things we've done, this kind of shows you the zoom in. So you'll see on the St. Christopher's Church how much data we have there along with the phone number, the hours, the website. And this Butterfield area is one section of the city or one neighborhood that if somebody was sponsored there, it would show you that this Butterfield area is sponsored by whomever. But in absence of that, we provide our contact information so that they can reach out to us and get their name up there. There are, in fact, also landscape maintenance districts in some of those areas. So if you wanted to just sponsor a sidewalk, beautify an area, you can get connected through that as well. So that gives you a little insight into what we have with the Adopt a Neighborhood. Again, we'll be reaching out to different individuals to see that we can get more interaction going on this. We continue to present it to the nonprofit roundtable. This map is a new item that wasn't available at the last time, so we hope to get more interest and participation now with this interactive map. So going back to the homeless, we talked about the 73 homeless from the last point in time count. When we look at what the city has in terms of funding, we've essentially have between the community development block grants and the emergency solutions grants, we average about, we'll call it $6,300 a year per homeless individual. Now, how that relates to other jurisdictions is when you're looking at that relative to the number of homeless, Riverside's funding per capita is about $1,800. Paris has a higher amount given their low homeless population, but you will see that Moreno Valley, we have the largest amount of funding available per homeless. So we're doing the best we can with the money we have, and luckily we have a little bit more money through these grants, primarily the addition of that ESG grant over the last couple of years that provides us additional resource to address what's going on in the community. So reaching to the next step, what has the city done in the last year to address homelessness? Through the direction of the mayor, conversations with Albuquerque, we do have our Homeless to Work program, and I am happy to say that this program is functioning. Salvation Army has signed the contract. We'll be bringing it in, but they have started operating the program effective December 11th. I do have postcards available that have this image on it. Those will be provided to community members, passed out to the homeless. So what the Salvation Army has been doing is, you'll see Vince's picture here. Vince is the individual that's driving the van, interacting with the homeless, going through these items. They've already been bringing in the homeless, going through kind of their intake assessment, seeing what they need, seeing if they need to connect them to different community partners or county resources. Part of this program is getting them connected for driver's license, Social Security, any other identification they need to restart their life or get them connected with other areas. Now, the Salvation Army, we are being sponsored kind of by Waste Management as well. Waste Management is providing tools and resources. So as we get into the cleanup area, we'll be utilizing their services, or at least their tools. Now, since December 11th, we have not initiated kind of the cleanup areas. So the city sponsors the intake of the homeless to get an assessment, and we sponsor the cleanup within the CDBG areas. Salvation Army has been doing the intake, but what they've been able to do is utilize this resource of those homeless that have come in, and they've actually separately hired them for other programs outside of doing the cleanup within the CDBG. So as you see some of the bell ringers at different facilities, those could possibly be prior homeless individuals that have come in, got a little help, and now they're working for minimum wage to ring the bells during the season. Additionally, the Salvation Army has their adult rehabilitation center, and they've passed along one individual to that. So if you see the facility along the 215, they enter that program. It's about a 6-month program. They clean up a lot of their activities, and then they learn some of the business as they operate that center. So the program already, just from inception, has been able to be leveraged into other means of work outside of just what we do through the CDBG program. So with that, that concludes my report for this evening. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer those.
I wanted to just make sure, and I think I received an answer to this already, but on the cards or the little community sheet that says about the Homeless to Work program, does it have a phone number in there where someone, maybe a friend or a family member, can call that number and maybe get that homeless person connected to the Salvation Army?
Yes, and since this program has been announced, the homeless individuals have been reaching out to the Salvation Army. What this card provides is a couple different points of contact. One thing is it provides the picture of Vince so that they're comfortable when he comes up in the van.
So that's the actual card?
Yes, that's the actual card, and I do have additional copies for council members. But it provides Vince's phone number if they need to contact him directly, along with an email and the address for Salvation Army. So the goal with these cards is to give them to the homeless so that they know how to contact Vince. but also through the individuals that are helping the homeless. So if you see a group of homeless individuals on a lot, you can reach out to Vince and have him interact with them and see how he can help them out and get them off the street.
And then my other question is, are code officers right now or previously, are they allowed to speak to the homeless?
From my understanding, yes, they are. Currently, right now, it's either code officers or police that are typically interacting with the homeless individuals.
So would the code officers get some of these too?
Yes, they will.
What about, maybe this might be for the chief, but do the police officers have enough pocket-sized resources, homeless resources? Do you need more?
Good evening, Mayor. We do have quite a few resources available to us, and as those draw down, we do get resupplied pretty readily.
Oh, okay, great. And then, I really like how we were able to get that one slide of the various neighborhoods that are eligible for the adopted neighborhood. So I think that's good. That's really good. I think we should just continue to embrace it, and hopefully we can get more groups to adopt those neighborhoods.
And per your direction, I know this is a discussion that we've had with you. It isn't necessarily critical that there be a contact person for that neighborhood. Sometimes there isn't. And this is something that I know that the mayor and Councilmember Cabrera have directed us. If a nonprofit, a church, or somebody has a neighborhood that we've identified, they can just go in and just start working. There doesn't necessarily have to be a go-to person in that neighborhood that has to be the contact. They just start, they can make the contact once they're visible out in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Councilmember Cabrera?
Thank you. Marshall, you mentioned the point in time count that takes place, I believe, in January. Are we partnering up with them at all in that project?
The county is coordinating the next point in time count, which will be January 23rd. What we're doing is we're securing a facility for the operations to occur out of. I believe we'll be doing it out of the Cottonwood Golf Course. What we do is we coordinate with police, we coordinate with staff. Even myself will be volunteering as an individual to do part of the count in the field, but we do provide them the resources that they request for.
Yeah, I would like more information on that. I want to participate in that as well. And my next question is, as far as the Homeless to Work initiative itself, I would like to see if maybe I can spend, or if the council would like to spend a few hours out there. You said he drives the actual van. So, for myself, I would like to go out there and actually interact with the homeless and be there with Mr. Fredberg and, see it for myself and see what I can actually do. So if I can have a meeting, if you can help us set that up between Salvation Army and any other council members who would like to do that as well, I would appreciate that.
Yes, we'll look into that.
And my last question is, if you can just refresh my memory here on the actual services that we provide through the program. I know that there are caseworkers through Salvation Army that help the homeless get a driver's license, Social Security cards. We provide them with some sack lunches. But what about shelter? Actual rooftop over their head. How are we taking care of that?
So from a shelter perspective, there are regional shelters. What we try to do is get them connected with those areas. Like in this case, as Salvation Army reaches out to the homeless, they go through this intake process. They assess them if there's drug addiction issues, if there's other issues on that aspect. So that may depend then where they lead them down that path. Do they take them to the county so that they can work with county services? They may need to go to a drug rehab facility and work through that. If they're not in that aspect and they're just needing they're just needing shelter, we do, through our Emergency Solutions Grant, have funding that's available to help with some of the motel vouchers if there's not rooms available. Otherwise, it can subsidize some components. And so we work with them. We do fund right now Catholic Charities. And so we'll reach out to those, but there are shelters throughout the region that we try to find a spot for them. And that's one of the things that even as police or code interact with these individuals, they do try to point them in the right direction so that they have a place to go to or have transportation to get to those shelters.
Thank you. And one more thing popped into my head right now. As far as the Adopt a Street program and Keep Moreno Valley Beautiful, you know, the ELC has adopted a street over by Moreno Valley High School as well. So I'm glad to hear that you're meeting with Victory Outreach Church, and I'm sure there are other entities out there who are looking to help as well. So with both of those coming together, I know with the Homeless to Work initiative, as far as the jobs that we're going to be providing, it's going to have to do with cleaning up certain areas in Moreno Valley. So I'm sure you already aware of this, but you know, the streets that are being cleaned through Adopt a Street, you know, if we can maybe separate those from the ones that the homeless are cleaning so we don't overlap.
Yes, we've coordinated with Public Works, the Maintenance and Operations Division. They're overseeing which ones are being adopted, and then they're letting us know which areas we can clean up. Most of the areas will be, they'll have curbs or they'll be lots. So as we look at the parcel next to the CRC, that's an area that they can clean up that's safe and sufficient, that's not taking away from what the other programs are adding to the community as well.
Thank you, Marshall.
So have we identified the Homeless to Work locations? Because I think I thought I heard that we haven't yet.
We have a map of different locations, and so coordinating with Code, Housing Authority, Public Works, and Parks, we have different areas that we can clean up. And so what we're constructing is a list of areas of street that they can go to as needed, and then typically what we can do is reach out to them on an on-call basis. So if there's a parcel that has a lot of trash that's a city parcel and we need them to clean it up and it lies within the CDBG project area, we can utilize them. Okay. Right now, what the cleanup programs will start after Christmas. So Salvation Army has been taking those ones that have the individuals that have cleared through the intake, and they've been employing them through different means as they're kind of setting up this program. So we're making sure the homeless are addressed, but the cleanup will come a little bit later.
But they haven't been using the funds yet for the actual homeless.
The
for
funds
the cleanups yet.
Not for the cleanups. The funds that they've been using from the city are for the intake.
For the intake, okay,
As they
got it.
start the cleanup of the city streets in those areas, then that will be the separate CDBG funds.
That'll probably, maybe we'll start seeing that more in January.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because of the holidays, and then they're doing the intake and all that. Okay, thank you. Okay, great. Well, I think for the most part, I would just like us to continue to embrace, the Adopt a Neighborhood program. Just like everywhere we go, just mentioning the Adopt a Neighborhood, that there's these neighborhoods that we can adopt. I think if we're all on board, it takes a village. And then I think we're doing a great job with the Homeless to Work program already. And so, thank you. So we'll go ahead and there'll be no more business before the council, so the meeting is adjourned at, do you have a comment? Okay.
Yes, sorry about that. I would like to, item A3, for future requests.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one. The film festival that we had, we incorporated an art walk into that, and that was the first time that we've actually done that here in Moreno Valley. So for next year, I would like to request staff to set up at least 2 art walks here in Moreno Valley. We do have a large community who are advocating for the arts, the school districts. We have art studios here in Moreno Valley as well. So I would like to see the city lead at least 2 art walks next year. Potential locations would be, again, the mall, or also art studios here in Moreno Valley, or public locations, for example, the CRC. And if we can be the leader and partner with the other parties here in Moreno Valley, I think that would be another fun event for our community to come out to. So that's what I would like to see, if we can work on that and bring it back to the council.
So just to clarify, you're requesting for the city to be the lead agency?
Correct.
Okay.
I also want to remind staff about the
Oh, speak into the
Jazz
microphone.
Festival. It's on. Can you hear me? Okay. Remind you about the Jazz Festival on May 5th, and if you can give us an update on the 19th. Thanks.
Okay, so is there consensus to direct staff to work on the art walk? Okay, yes, yes, okay. All right, and the little jazz festival?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, okay, okay. All right, great. Okay, so we'll go ahead and adjourn at 7:27 p.m.